Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Testimony Thursdays, where I am your host, Dr. Jazz, physical therapist, author, mentor, child of God, sister, aunt, daughter, all of those good things. And you already know how we do. We're going to get started with a scripture. Okay. So today's scripture is from Luke 16:10. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with very much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. If that is not a word, y'all, that's something I'm working on. Like definitely, just using the gifts that God has given me and just trying to take care of everything that He's given me so the prayers can be answered for the more. Okay. So today's episode, y'all, I really feel like y'all are about to be weak. Like I have so much to talk about, and it's a lot of things is gonna be very funny. Um, so yeah, let's get into it. Today's episode is going to be about the jobs that I have had so far as a physical therapist. So, if you know a little bit about my story, about my testimony, I failed out of physical therapy school my first year of PT school because my GPA was a 2.76 and I needed a 2.80 to remain in the program. So, that's why my book, available on Amazon, self published, is titled 2.76. So I was supposed to graduate in 2020, but I graduated 2021, August 2021. So my first job, y'all, my first job is so funny that I want to create like a TV show off of it. And I want it to be like a mixture of Insecure and Abbott Elementary. Like it's that funny. So I'm gonna talk about it. So basically, okay. So for me, I said that, when I graduated, I wanted to work in an underserved environment. Like I wanted to help people. I want to do all these things. And God said, "Oh, I know the perfect place." I said, "Okay." So I worked back at home in South Carolina, like a small town in South Carolina where my dad's side of the family is from. So I had family there. It was great. And I was working as a pediatric physical therapist. So I was doing early intervention, school-based pediatrics, and outpatient pediatrics. So mind you, this, I just graduated, like this, I'm fresh, I'm new, like, and I'm so excited to get things started and everything. And I was their first full-time physical therapist. So it was a small clinic, woman owned, and it was like serving that town and also surrounding counties. So it was really cool, a really cool setup. Like the employees, the managers and stuff were really great. And just a little day by day, take out day by day. So I mainly worked like in homes. So it was from that birth to 3 years of age population, which is my favorite like age population to treat. So I mainly worked in homes, and then we also had a clinic as well. So like when they kind of aged out of early intervention, they could come to the clinic, or if it was a more complex case and we needed like special equipment, they can come to the clinic as well. And then the schools. So it's always funny. Like I tell the story because so I was working in early intervention, and with children who have like disabilities, once they age out of that birth to 3, which is part B of early intervention, they go to like part C. I think I got that mixed up, but they go to one part and then they go to another one once they enter school. So that's under like the IDEA. So for me, well, if it was in like another town, what usually happens is that the physical therapist, the early intervention physical therapist meets with a school-based physical therapist, and they kind of go over the child's like medical history and what they were working on, the goals, and they all kind of like collaborate so the transition into the schools are smooth. So for me, I was doing both. So I was already working with these kids. So once they transitioned, like I would always make a joke and be like, I don't know if they're gonna qualify. Like I need to talk to the other physical therapist. And I'm like, oh, it's me. I'm the physical therapist. And I use like the Peabody. That's usually the assessment I use for like early intervention in school based because you can use that until they're age 5. So, when they're coming into the schools, like we usually start the process at like 2.5 years of age or 3 years of age. So I already like did the Peabodys and stuff because I was seeing them for early intervention. So it was just so funny to me. But so that's a little bit about what the job was. Now, mind you, like I just graduated. This is my first year out. Like I'm so excited. And I had this job lined up, like this job, my apartment and everything lined up before I took the NPTE. So I took the NPTE in August, and my scores were withheld. So sometimes that just happens with like the NPTE. Like sometimes they got to check stuff or whatever. So I was like so nervous about that. And let me just tap this, make it a little brighter. Oops. I was so nervous about it because I'm like, why are my scores withheld? Like, did I fail? Like, what's going on? But I ended up getting my scores back. I think like 3 days after everyone else got there. So you talk about nerve wracking. Like, I was like a wreck. But because I already was hired, like I was already doing my orientation and everything. So yeah, that's a little bit about the job. Like I said, like the employees were amazing. I'm gonna tell about a couple stories. Like it's so funny. Okay, so one of the stories, so mind you, I work in a small town. Like we didn't even have a Target. Like it was pretty small. Like everybody basically knows everyone. So, and some of the stories aren't funny. Like some of them are actually really sad. So, yeah, this just a disclaimer. Um, but so one funny story though, I was seeing this child, and like I said, I'm fresh out of school. Like I'm very like bright eyed, bushy tail. Like I want to make sure I'm doing everything right. Like all these things. So I go see this child, and it was always something when I went to this house. But the first time I went there, like the mom was there and stuff, and I was just telling her about what I do. Like, has she ever, received physical therapy, all this and that. So, it was a process where they were getting early intervention, and everything was kind of rolling. So I'm doing my evaluation, and with peds, like you usually sit on the floor, like because you're with the child and stuff, and you're engaging with the child. So I'm on the floor, and I'm like, doing my tests, like range of motion, stretches, like trying to feel muscle tone, like all of these things. Before I know it, there is a species that flies over my head. And I was like, excuse me? So I'm like, as a reflex, like I'm holding the child up, like not saying they was like I was using them as a weapon. Not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying as a reflex, my hands kind of went up and the child was in my hands. So I look at the mom and I'm like, what's going on? Like, what are we doing? And she was like, oh my goodness, I forgot to tell you, every time people come over here, I forget to tell them that we have parrots. Cause stop playing with me. What you mean y'all have parrots? So the parrot flew over my head, y'all, over my head, like this, like I'm not even joking, like this close. So I'm like, what are we doing? Like, what do you mean you have parrots? And why are they not in cages? So yeah, she was like, I forgot to tell you. And how do you forget to tell somebody that? So every time I went over there, that same parrot tried to get me. Now they had two parrots, but only one could fly. The other one, I forgot what happened. The other one couldn't fly. But the parrot flew over my head. Like I'm working, and mind you, I'm a new grad. Like I'm already stressed out. Like so that was just a whole thing. And then when I went back to the home another time, like there's literally a deer on the front porch. And sometimes the mom wasn't home all the time, and the family was primarily like Spanish speaking, and I hablo español un poquito, so I can talk to abuela a little bit un poquito, but I was asking her like, why is there a deer on the front porch? And she was like, oh, like my husband found the deer last night, so we just kind of kept him here. We're trying to like nurture him and stuff and make sure he's okay. And I'm just like, what is this real? Like, so that happened. And then they had this really beautiful white dog. Like, I think they're called Great Pyrenees. Just a beautiful dog. And I just loved him, y'all. I loved him so much. Like every time I got out my car, he would walk me to the house. Like he was just a just amazing dog. Very smart, very intelligent. And they also had sheep. And the sheep they did not like me. Like every time I got out of the car, the sheep tried to chase me. So then the dog would come and he would literally like put the sheep back in the backyard and he would walk me to the front door. And I always felt safe. Like even when I saw the deer, I was like, it's okay because the dog got my back. Like. So, after a couple of visits, I wasn't seeing the dog anymore. So I'm talking to, abuela, and I'm like, ¿Dónde está el perro? Blanco perro, perro blanco, what's going on? And only thing I heard was like, what's the M word like for death in Spanish, muerta or something like that. And I was like, I know he ain't died. Like maybe I ain't hear her right. So then I asked the mom the next visit, and she was like, yeah, like he died, and I was just so sad. So that's that. It was a mess. And then there was one time, and mind you, this is South Carolina country. There was one time where I go to a home initial evaluation. Like I don't know y'all don't know me, and I'm outside, like I'm outside the gate of the home or whatever, and I look inside the gate. Or I'm outside the gate, and the mom is like, "Oh, come on in, like you can let yourself in, just open the gate or whatever." So I'm trying to open the gate, and the only thing I hear is an oink oink, and I said, "Wait a minute," because I'm not opening no gate when I hear an oink oink. So I was like, "Do y'all have a pig?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, it's okay. The pig is friendly." And then the pig comes over, like if you're not, yeah, the pig comes over and is like galloping. I don't know what it's doing, and it's trying to come get me. And I'm like, I'm not opening the gate. Like y'all gonna have to come out here and get me. So she comes out like holding her baby, and like she moves the pig or whatever. I forgot the pig's name. She moves the pig, and then I come in, and I'm like, that's not, like I'm a big dog person. Like if it was a dog, I would put my hand out, let the dog, smell me and stuff, and I would be like, okay. But the fact that this is a pig, like I'm not doing that. So the pig, I do my evaluation and stuff. The evaluation goes well. And then at the end, she's like, "Do you want to pet the pig? Like, he's really like a dog." And I'm like, okay. So I meet him, and he was really like a dog. Like, he was like doing like the little snorting noise when you pet him. And like, he was actually really friendly. So, but that was my first and last time at a house. Like, so, okay, a little bit of stuff that was hard to deal with. That's not funny at all. It was like a lot of our kids, I would say probably like 70% of our kids were in the foster system, experienced like child abuse. Like it was very heavy. Like this job, in my opinion, was extremely heavy. Like you had kids who like had drug exposure in utero. Like it was just a lot going on. So that was kind of hard for me. And then, just like one time, there was like a double homicide in one of the projects that I went to. And like this happened the night before I had a visit, and I thought the mom was going to cancel. She ended up not canceling. So I still went to the project. And it was like my patient's cousin who was like murdered, and like somebody was murdered, and then it was like retaliation, and another person was murdered. And I'm like, I did not want to go that next day because I already know how it is. Like, then somebody else gonna try to retaliate. So just stuff like that was like really hard that I felt like, you know, PT school did not prepare me at all for any of these things. So then another thing that happened, I went to see another patient, and while I'm there, like we get a knock at the door, and it's somebody's PO. And I'm like, what? Like what is going on? So the PO was looking for the child's father. And I was like, I'm just here. Like I had on my shirt, my work shirt and stuff, and I was like holding the baby. I'm like, I'm a physical therapist. I don't got nothing to do with nothing what's going on. So when they knocked on the child's mother went out and opened the door, and then she like slammed it, and she came back in the room, and she like put a substance underneath the drawer or whatever the room was in, and she was like, "That's my child's father's PO," and yeah, so I'm trying to hide some stuff. So it was a lot going on. It was a lot going on. It's so many other stories that that's what I'm saying. Like, I really need a TV show to explain this stuff because y'all would be like, what, Jazz? Like, there's no way this happened. And I'm like, this is true stuff. So I definitely didn't feel prepared in that aspect of like being basically like a social worker. Like, it was a lot going on. So, but one thing I can say that I felt prepared for from PT school was definitely like referring people. So there were some kids where, like they were developmentally delayed. And mind you, working in early intervention, like we can catch things like very quickly, like at an early age, all of this stuff. So, there were kids who were like, 10 months old and they're not yet sitting, they're not crawling, like none of those things. So that's when, you're looking at their tone, like you're looking at like cognitive abilities, you're looking at like fine motor, like all of these things that you're trying to tie into and like, figure out what's going on. Like, so, I had this one child who, and sometimes in early intervention, you can work anywhere. So you can see like the child in any like natural environment. So I've been to parks, I've been to libraries, I've been to daycares, like anywhere that's safe to see the child. So one time I went to the daycare and this child, like, I can look at their birth history and stuff like before that I see them because it's a whole system with early intervention, like based on the state. So South Carolina is BabyNet. So I could look at everything in BabyNet and see what the early interventionist was evaluating and why they referred to a PT. So I'm looking at the evaluation, and this child is 19 months of age, and it just said like developmental delays. Like it didn't have much information. So I go see her and I'm like talking to the daycare. She was at a daycare. I'm talking to the daycare teachers and I'm like, oh, like, hey, I'm here to see so and so. Like, what's going on with her? Like, is she having trouble walking? Because I'm thinking, at 19 months, like I'm thinking maybe her gait looks different or like something. And they were like walking. They were like, she is not even like standing up. So I'm like, what's going on? So I go see her and like her muscle tone, y'all, like very floppy, like hypotonia, like all of these things. Like when she stood, her knees automatically went into like hyperextension. Like it was a lot going on. Like, and the daycare teachers explained it. They were like, when we feel her muscles, it doesn't feel like she has any muscles. Like that's how they described it. So I automatically knew that it was low tone. So this is the first visit, first time I'm seeing her. So then I end up like calling the mom and all that stuff and like talking to her about what I was seeing. And I felt like we need a referral to a neurologist. And she also had like a heart condition. She had pectus excavatum and something else she had. But basically, when I was getting the birth history and everything, I automatically, knew it was like some type of syndrome. So I was like, we need a referral to a neurologist. So she goes to a neurologist, and the neurologist basically says, like, this was like, of course, a referral takes months. So mind you, now she's probably like close to 2. So she was already getting OT speech PT. So the neurologist, they did an MRI. They saw some abnormalities, but the neurologist was not concerned. They was like, continue with therapy. Like she's going to be fine, all this and that. So me and the PTA, we were like, no, like she needs to get genetic testing done, like all of these things. Like we're really trying to tell the mom, and the mom was like not having it. So eventually, because mind you, like now she's like 2, and she was delayed in every area. Like she wasn't talking, like fine motor. She wasn't like playing with toys. Like everything was delayed. So, she's going on 2.5, and we're like telling the mom, like, hey, like, we really need to figure out what's going on because, she's about to be 3. She's going to age out of early intervention. Eventually she's going to go to school. So the mom finally was on board. We got genetic testing done, and she did have a syndrome. I can't even remember what it was, but it was very rare genetic. But I just feel like that's an example of, really using your skills as a physical therapist to be able to identify what's abnormal and talking to parents about it. And it's not easy. Like it was so hard. Like a lot of parents, I got a lot of pushback on parents. Like my coworkers got a lot of pushback. And what happens is that if it's not caught in early intervention and a child ends up going to school, even if they don't go to school at 3, let's say they start going to school at 4 or 5, they go to school, they don't have a diagnosis. Now they're 5 years of age. They're not potty trained. They're delayed with their speech. And they go to school. And like in the first month of school, the teachers are like, hey, like we need to set up a meeting because this child is not hitting their milestones, age appropriate milestones, and they may need special education. So now, it's time that's been wasted because now you have to do an evaluation. You need to go get a diagnosis because even within the schools, like after they hit a certain age, like they need a diagnosis to just help push with that, the resources that they can receive in school. So that's just the whole thing. So like that birth to 3 is like a critical time. Like to really just make sure they get all the referrals they need and we can really get a picture of what's going on. Because I know so many people are scared to get like misdiagnosed. And especially in the Black community, I've heard things like, oh, I don't want my child to be labeled, if there's not like something going on, which I completely understand. I'm just always like, we need to get resources, so that's a whole another podcast episode. So that happened. And then, I just got to a point where I definitely was like emotionally drained, like, and I needed to get out of South Carolina. Like, I just needed something new. So, and like I said, like my coworkers, my managers, amazing. Like, I still talk to them till this day. Like, I saw one of my managers when I went home in June. She came to like a speaking event that I did. So I'm so thankful for her. And what I loved about that job was that they were really big on God. And like, it wasn't like one of those things where it's like, oh, like we're just gonna put this up, like we're gonna put up a scripture and that's it. Like, no, they were really like Christ like. Like, I remember one time I evaluated this girl and a whole bunch of stuff was going on with her. Like, she got hit by a car and it was just a lot. But her mom like didn't have any gas. So I was like trying to set up appointments and stuff, and they didn't want us coming to the home. Like, it was just, yeah. So she was like, I don't have gas. Like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get back home. So my manager followed this lady to the gas station and put gas in her car. And that's how I knew like they were really about that life. Like, this was not show. So that happened. Y'all, I'm gonna have to do a part two because I'm already 20 minutes in. See, anywho, that happened for that job. So then after that, like I said, like how I said, and I was taking work home too. Like, a lot of stuff was really heavy. Like, I was taking work home, trying to do my notes at home. And it was just kind of hard to balance like being their first full-time physical therapist, working in 3 different settings. And I also had a PRN job at an inpatient rehabilitation. So it was just tough. It was definitely like a learning experience. And with the inpatient rehabilitation, like I really like that job as well. That is where I got like a lot of experience working with geriatrics, like stroke survivors, Parkinson's, amputees, like all of that stuff. And that was a really cool experience because I got one-on-one treatment with patients for like an hour, and we got to see patients make huge improvements. So I'm so big on inpatient rehab. And I also like working alongside techs and stuff because it's really, it's fast paced. And sometimes you have to do like group therapy. So you're seeing more than one patient at a time, and that can get tough. So, working with techs to help bring patients down to the rehab gym was always helpful. And co-treating was nice too, like treating with PT and OT. Because sometimes, it can be difficult to like transfer patients. But yeah, and I would say for that inpatient rehab, like I would feel so comfortable with sending like, God forbid, but like if one of my family members had to go there, like I would know 100% that the therapists are going to do what they need to do to get you back to where you were. Like, the therapists they were amazing. Like, they were some really good therapists, like, and they really cared, so yeah, that's what I'm gonna say about that inpatient job. And I picked up a PRN job because I was very financially irresponsible in my first year of PT school, and I was outside. I think I talked about this on a previous episode, but I was like traveling and stuff. I was just doing so much, so I was like, let me get another job to have some spending money. But yeah, so that was like my first job right out of school, like early intervention, school based, outpatient peds, and then inpatient rehab. And then from there, I'm gonna have to do a part two because from there I started travel physical therapy. So like I said, I needed something new. I needed to get out of South Carolina, like, single, no kids. I was like, I just want, a new environment. So I ended up going to Arizona. So I worked at that job for a year and a half, and I went to Arizona March of 2023, and I worked at a on a reservation, a Native American reservation, and I did school-based pediatrics there, and I just finished up the school year. So I was working there from like March to like end of May, and I love travel physical therapy. Like, I think it's amazing. Like if you're a new grad or if you're in PT school and you're thinking about, what you want to do after school, I definitely recommend travel physical therapy because one, the pay is higher. Two, it's refreshing. Like you can take breaks throughout the year and you kind of know, like to me, I feel like when I have an end goal, like I'm like, okay, I can do this. Like it's only 3 months or it's only X, Y, and Z. So that was really, really cool. It was a cool experience. It was in the middle of nowhere. And it like we didn't have a Walmart, no Target. Like the nearest Walmart was like an hour and like 45 minutes away. And it was like 4 hours away from Phoenix, but it was a time difference because Phoenix recognizes like daylight. No, Phoenix doesn't do daylight savings, but the reservation does. So I'm like, what time is it? So every time I would drive to Phoenix and stuff, I'm like, or New Mexico, that was another like close state. I'm like, I do not know what time it is. But that was an amazing experience. Like, it was very peaceful, very calm, quiet. Like, I rarely heard police sirens, ambulance sirens. Um, and I was just like amazed. And the kids, till this day, the kids are the most respectful kids I have ever met in life. Like, working with them, they were awesome. They were very quiet, very, very quiet. And I believe like in their culture, it's to respect elders, you don't really talk as much. So very, very quiet. And it was just a good time. Like I thoroughly enjoyed it. And in the schools, I don't enjoy the paperwork. That's the only thing. Like it's a bunch of paperwork you have to do. It's just I feel like it can be redundant, but working with the kids was awesome and working in that area was awesome too. And a lot of times you find like people who are native and are from there, they may go off into the military or something, but they come back home. Like, and I can see why, because it's very like community, family. Like I remember going to one of my coworkers' homes and we were like outside playing volleyball. Like it was just fun. It was a good time. And it was cool to go to like New Mexico. I went to Albuquerque. I got to visit there, and I went to Sandia, that mountain. So that was nice because you went up to the mountain and it's like snowing. It was freezing. That was nice. Then I also went to Canyon de Chelly. So that's like an area, very sacred area where I got to see like archery, and my tour guide was phenomenal because we were going through like the canyons, and it was muddy that day. So we ended up getting stuck in the mud, and like it was like the water was coming, but he ended up getting us out of there. So he was wonderful. I have a video too. I need to post that with my memories. But yeah, so a typical day, I was working probably from like 9 to 2 when I saw kids. And then from like 2 to 5, I would do like paperwork and stuff. And it didn't really take that long, but those were my typical hours. And I did stay for like ESY services, so in the school year services. And funny story about that, it's like, so I was working in person, but I'll talk about this later too on the next episode. But for my jobs now, like I work home health geriatrics, and I also work virtually for school-based pediatrics. So I actually work for a school on the Native American reservation. So that's just kind of like a full circle. So yes, so I did that for 3 months, and then after that, that's how I landed in Hawaii. So I'm gonna talk about that on the next episode because I didn't think this one was gonna take that long, but I guess I can be a little long-winded. So yeah. So what is my test? We end every episode talking about what is a test that has led to a testimony. I would say for me, my test definitely for my first job was resilience. Like, because I stayed there for a year and a half, y'all. And when I say it was hard, it was hard. Like communicating with parents, like not having the resources we needed. It was just really, really tough. And I'm glad that I learned, and I'm still learning to have tough conversations because you really could be saving somebody's life by the conversation that you have. So for me, I don't take that lightly. And sometimes it's not always the right time. And I always pray before too. I'm like, God, fill me with the Holy Spirit, fill them with the Holy Spirit. And I got this prayer from another patient's mom who prayed for this other lady who I was taking over her position in Hawaii. And in her prayer, she said, prepare the hearts of the patients and their parents for what they may not be ready to hear. So I say that every day now. I'm like, prepare their heart, prepare my heart for what I might not be ready to hear. Because, especially, if you're a parent and you have a child and the child is not diagnosed with anything like a disability in utero, you're thinking of a whole different life than what you're about to have. So it's like the parents do have like a grieving, moment of like, oh, like I thought my child was going to be typical, but it turns out, they're neurodivergent or something. Like that's the whole thing you have to like really embrace. And it's just a delicate situation. So, but I have so many different miracles that I have witnessed by being a physical therapist and the people who I've worked with. And yeah, and now to see them, because I'm friends with like a lot of them on Facebook now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I remember when this child was just a baby, like, oh my goodness, now they're like 3, 4, 5. So it's like really, really sweet seeing those things. But yes, thank you all for joining me for another episode. The next one, I am going to talk about how I got into Hawaii. So, yes, thank you.